platform, and of course, congratulations to the team behind it. One photo with all of you together. Let's bring that in the frame as well, and of course, celebrate this moment of the launch with us with a warmer round of applause, everyone. So I think, Mumbai, you need to scale up your energy. Your energy is lesser than mine. That's not possible, right? One versus, I believe, at least 150 plus. Get a bigger round of applause. Come on, everyone. Wow. Now we're talking about the Amchi Mumbai, which I've always fallen in love with, which a little more enthusiasm. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we'd now like to cue in your attention towards our next discussion. Well, moving on to our next panel discussion, where our panelists will now discuss about cross-channel integration, programmatic TV, audio, OH. Well, on this note, we have our leadership from various companies and brands. We're talking about from Deloitte India, we have from Horta, we have from Max Life Insurance, we have from Lemma, we have from Madison Digital, and we have from GeoAds. Of course, the leadership will give their perspective through their wealth of experience, but if there is any knowledge piece which you felt throughout the day has struck a chord with you, do remember to hashtag e4m real time as one word, as we'd urge you to spread this knowledge across. And just by show of hands, before we go to the final panel discussion, of course, just by show of hands, we'd like to know any of you in the room who has at least met 2 people today. We'd just like you to raise your hand. Just 2 new people, that's it. The ones who have their hands down have just been self-involved, or 2 and more is what I'm trying to say. Not just 2, but 2 and more. Come on, guys. More hands up. Okay, so I think everyone's a little more busy with themselves, but I'm sure you are networking with each other. But we'd urge all of you to take out your valuable time and network further. Well, on that note, it is now time for me to call upon for the moderator of this session. Let's invite Ms. Irvinder Kaur Ray, Executive Director of Deloitte India. Let's give Ms. Ray a warm round of applause. Thank you for joining us. Starting, of course, with the extreme left. Thank you, Ms. Ray, for sharing your... we're looking forward to your curation, of course, with our eminent panelists. It's an honor having you. We'd also like to call upon Mr. Omkar Darekar, General Manager, Customer Growth and Engagement, Porter. Let's give him a warmer round of applause. Looking forward to his bits of wisdom. Of course, Omkar, starting with the extreme right, you got it right. Mr. Sahil Rawal, Vice President, Brand, Product, Platforms, Marketing, Max Life Insurance. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause. Thank you, Sahil, for joining us. Ms. Shivalika Anand, AVP Sales, Lemma. Shivalika, another honor to have you back on stage. Ms. Suchi Jain, GM, Madison Digital. Thank you, Suchi, for joining us today and being a part of our discussion. Shivalika, just be on the left, right under your creative. Mr. Vignesh Narayanan, Vice President, Business Head, Media, GeoAds. Let's give him a warmer round of applause as we welcome him on the platform. With that being said, it is, of course, an honor to have our moderator who has agreed to be a part of this conversation. Ms. Ray, we'll leave it up to you to take forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, my esteemed panelist. I heard her waking you guys up, so hopefully we'll be able to engage with you a little better. I know it's the last session of the day, so let's try and make it much more entertaining. Okay, so the topic for us is cross-channel integration. Are we audible till the last? Am I audible? Okay. So the topic in itself says that we have to be where the customer is or our consumer is. And consumer today is omnichannel. He or she is available everywhere. They're consuming content, looking at education programs, interacting with the e-commerce platforms or our products, brands everywhere. So as a brand, is it a problem? Is it better? Yeah, all right. Thank you. So, as a brand, as a brand custodian running the campaigns of our clients, we should be there across all the channels. It should be omnipresent experience for our consumers. So, we will start with our panelists. What are the benefits that they are seeing when they're using cross-channel integration? So I'll start. This is an open question to the panel, so maybe we can start with you.
Fair enough. First of all, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be present with the esteemed panel here. Really excited to share some insights and learning. I think the benefits, modern consumers today interact with a lot of touch points across multiple channels. There's a marketing principle which states that it requires 7 or more touch points to make somebody internalize your brand or take an action towards your brand. I think in that context, since there are so many touch points out there, there are so many advertising platforms out there, there's so much content to consume for an individual, it becomes essential that there is a consistency and relevancy with respect to what you put out there. I think what consistency and relevancy does is it helps your brand messaging be heard. Consistency creates experience which is seamless in nature and not fragmented for a user, and which adds on to, let's say, better ad recall or better brand awareness and maybe customer loyalty. I think that's the key benefits of cross-channel for me. And what cross-channel also enables us is to focus more on integrated analytics. What I mean by integrated analytics is to understand what consumers' behaviors are across platforms and how they shape up a brand's image or equity in the mind space of a consumer. And that adds a lot of value. I think we are able to assess our campaigns better, the measurement is better, and we're able to, let's say, invest strategically into channels which give us better ROI. So I think for me, I think these two stand out in terms of consistency with respect to messaging, and second is enabling integrated analytics.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The consumers are not looking at channels in isolation. They are experiencing the brand across all the channels. Sahil, what has been your experience and how have you used cross-channel integration?
Thank you, first of all, again, thank you E4m and thank you for having us here. I think I will start with some context on the life insurance industry that I represent. So I think a little bit of context in terms of the consumer, the buying habits, and what it takes to actually build the level of trust that we're looking at. See, first of all, a life insurance relationship is actually a 10 to 40 years ka relationship. A lot of marriages don't last these days, itna lamba. So there is a consistent, level of trust that you have to build to actually, allude the customer and to tell them how trustworthy is the brand. Second, the product itself is quite complex. How many of you would really know what a term insurance or probably a non-par savings insurance is? It's a very technical product. It's difficult to understand. And hence, there is a lot of education that's required for such kind of a product entry. Third, even the journeys itself are really long. So there's almost 70 to 80 form fields that you have to fill, and there are also post-payment kind of onboarding challenges that are there. So there is a consistent engagement that's required from the brand side. So having said that, with all these challenges, actually the cross-channel kind of media really helps us stitch all of these journeys, steps, stages, and eventually lead a seamless experience to the customer that enables us to educate, that enables us to engage, keep on engaging, and eventually leads us to better conversion. So that's how the cross-channel engagement really helps us. Thanks.
Thank you. Shivalika, from a OOH perspective, how do you see the clients fitting into this cross-channel integration for you?
This is good. Thank you. Thank you, E4M. Thank you, ma'am, for the question. I think while from a sales perspective, And coming on to straight on to that, everybody else is, and specifically hats off to media planners and marketers who actually have to go through and meet hundreds of the vendors out there in the market and try and create a complex world of digital ecosystem to fit into a complete user journey. And while we're talking about ROIs and measurements, DOH again comes as an emerging platform. I remember selling TikTok 5 years back wherein I literally had to beg for YouTube budget and nobody was even aware of what short media platform is. And as the consumer pattern and journey and the time has evolved over the period of time, there is a separate line item and budgets altogether for OTTs, CTVs. These are evolved mediums. OH on the contrary and DOH on the contrary is still an emerging moment. So while if I'll go to Sahil or Omkar, they'll say, "Ye ek aur naya channel aaya hai." So from that empathy perspective and understanding what a marketer is looking at, on an average, one individual actually get exposed to 2 to 3 digital screens. And digital out of home has been always a black box when it comes to usability, reporting, etc. So Lemma envisioned it 7 years back. We are digitizing the offline audiences to online audiences and kind of fitting in that cross-channel integration in a way so that marketers like these can actually have a full funnel approach from top to bottom. They can actually have users' attention in multiple touch points, be it on one-to-one or a one-to-many screen. So that is how DOH or a programmatic DOH is majorly playing a role.
Thanks. Shuchi, has it made your life more difficult?
Hello. Thanks for that question, Irvinder. And I would like to go on 2 of our clients who've given their perspective. We've had one OH team giving their perspective. And coming from an agency, I can definitely give the perspective there that yes, it makes our life a little difficult because if I were to see on that side, I have 2 clients where I have to justify why am I doing this? And then I have a publisher ecosystem. But coming back to our point, our POV, generally what we would see is that a cross-channel actually helps to build trust and it actually helps to build that awareness through consistency of messaging, because if you're able to see the same constant narrative everywhere across mediums, that reminder is constantly happening in the person's mind that you're trying to reach out to because it's already cluttered. We all don't want to touch upon that. At the same time, it also helps to get a rich and a detailed analysis of your consumer behavior. So you would know, okay, this particular set of people convert from this particular channel or someone else would convert from somewhere else. So you could optimize your medias accordingly because you know that where your return on investment is going to be maximum. So in a way it helps that. And adding on to it further, I believe that that also leads to hyper-personalization, the way everyone has been saying, of course, with the start of cookies and with the demise of cookies that we saw because of the giants that we know are doing it. But all in all, if you would see the whole cross-channel integration helps in addressing these, if I were to sum it in terms of a benefit.
Yeah, no, Suchi, that helps if all of these media channels are connected in a certain way. But yeah, we've seen also struggles and problems when the channels or media are not connected. Especially it happens in the traditional out of home or maybe on television, linear television. So when you get to programmatic and when the channels are connected, that probably makes the life a little easier. What is your take on this, Vignesh?
Thank you. I think the advantage of going last is that people before you have already summed up all the points, right? So I think the premise of a good advertisement is about showing the right ad to the right person at the right time. I don't think that's changed for whether it's a client or an agency or anybody, right? That premise stays true all the time. I think cross-channel integration, given the fact that every channel is now monetizing, right? Advertising is being seen as a core revenue channel for almost every platform. I don't think there is any platform nowadays which is not monetizing in one way or another. So with your ability to be able to see the customer at so many touch points, right? From the time he gets up, checks his phone, that's what all of us do. And from the time he goes back and logs into his Wi-Fi to the time he goes and sees his TV or set-top box, and from the time he goes back to his offline store, picks up vegetables, and then goes back to an e-commerce store to buy his shopping, right? You are able to reach the customers across so many touch points, right? how do you ensure that you're actually not building up fatigue? That's an important point. We all see ads. Yes, great. It's great to reach out to the customer in so many points. How do you ensure you not getting fatigue, right? So that, I think the integration is very important, because always be siloed in terms of your activations. And I think that's super important, because I don't think there's any marketer who I've spoken to in the last many years who's, even their brand budgets are now ROI focused. There was a time when there is performance and then brand, but then it's like brand budgets are equivalent to performance budgets nowadays, right? So how do we ensure that you get value for the buck? That's one. Second thing is that when you're having a cross-channel integration, for a lot of brands, also trial and error, right? So how do you figure out which channel works well, and how do you optimize on that channel at the right time, right? I think that's super important, because I have a lot of brands who we work with who basically have tried a particular channel and then as an experiment would have tried another channel, and then it works in silos, right? So how do you figure out what works for you, right? Given that there is a whole gamut of options that's available. So I think the ability to also manage cost, the ability to optimize, the ability to reduce fatigue. So you're only seeing the ad when fatigue, because there are so many different brands going on, right? It is just like those D&D calls we keep receiving every day. I'm sure all of us in the room basically get calls every day, right?
D&D doesn't work these days,
It
huh?
doesn't work. So how do you ensure that we are not doing the same thing back here, right? So that's what I believe a cross-channel integration actually truly delivers.
Yeah, no, I think thanks for that perspective. And you as Reliance can probably do the best because you are mapping the journey of the consumer right from the phone to all channels and tracking them everywhere. So that brings me to the next question in terms of the programmatic possibilities of these channels. What do you think about television as a programmatic channel or audio capability?
So before we get into that, I think people typically use programmatic for two ways, objectives. One objective is they are tired of talking to 20 different publishers, and they are like, okay, let me get one consolidated billing from one DSP and let me use a DSP as one channel for buying. The other one is the truly performance oriented brand, which basically says that, you know what, I really want performance, so let me figure out an DSP which got a great bidder, great first party data, and they can help deliver for me, right? So I think these two objectives, so it depends on what it is. From a brand perspective, in terms of capabilities, where are we? I think in terms of, I think every channel, whether you talk about CTV or whether you talk about audio, I think there are, from a objective number one, where you want to consolidate everything into one billing, yes, it's possible. But is it truly programmatic in terms of the way it was destined to be, in terms of it being truly biddable, common targeting capabilities, can we do measurement, right, etc. Are we there yet? No, we're not, right? For example, but I think there has been some growth in certain areas. CTV has got truly remarkable targeting capabilities that we didn't know was possible, right? In the Geo ecosystem as well, we have built a network of OTTs outside our own ecosystem, where we are able to leverage first party data truly, right? So the targeting capabilities have come a long way. Are they programmatically available? Most of it is, right? So there is parts of it which are actually growing fast, and then there are parts of it which are not keeping up to it. So is it truly programmatic? Not really, but does it serve one or two of the objectives? Yes.
Yeah, no, I think we were discussing this earlier also, especially audio, and we talk about linear TV, then probably there are restrictions. So, to you, how limited connected TV can be if you have to reach out to the larger audiences, and how are your clients reacting to the programmatic version of the TV, I would say?
So with CTV, Irvinder, what we're seeing, what's happening is that scale is obviously something to begin with because it's limited, right? A CTV is still considered as a phenomena that I have a TV that is connected to a digital ecosystem that is facilitating me to watch something online, right? So to begin with, one is the scale. The second piece, like I think Vignesh summed up most of our points now, if I could say, since he went first, that the measurement piece is also important because the way there is this concept of co-viewing that's happening on CTV, right? The way normal TV happens, that if it's a family, an average family of 4 people that we see, the co-viewing happens where the mother might be watching some show and all others are tagging along. The same concept happens also in CTV if you were to see. It would be my signed-in device that my parents would be using. So how are we actually measuring that I am to be reached out to for that particular ad or that product via that ad, or is it going to be my parents, right? So the measurement still becomes a little difficult. And the whole way in which the first party data to be utilized, like we're saying, the signals, right now I think India largely is sticking to the content that is being served, whether you know what kind of content is being consumed, or at max we would do a time band targeting the way a TV would facilitate. But we've not made much success going beyond that, where you know you can actually get the beauty of programmatic coming in where while a real-time bidding is happening, but do I get to put my first party data? To a certain extent, some OEM providers are giving us those cuts of, you know, the device being so expensive or this particular range where the assumption is this would be an HNI audience or a tier there from that point onwards, because coving will still be a factor come what may. So that
No,
is
so measurement is always a tricky thing to talk about, and especially in this context, it becomes very difficult. So in OOH, Shivalika, I know that it's been a challenge for a long time, but I think digital is serving some or addressing some of those challenges, no? Uh,
I think we all are talking about few of the emerging formats, and there are certain emerging formats which have actually evolved with over the period of time. A lot of feedback coming from the marketers. While we talk about programmatic DOH, globally 33% of the advertisers have actually shifted to from a normal traditional DOH to programmatic DOH. And not only this, I was just reading a Group M's report that says that $105 million revenue that is to be clocked alone in DOH by this year, and it's going to double down in next 2 years. So it is an important medium, but it has always been in a black box. You don't have you're just buying a real estate. You don't have measurement. You don't have real-time reporting. So that is where Lemma comes as a solution architect and a partner, wherein what we are talking about is you launch, amplify, pause a campaign. You do anything with a simple PGD. You don't take it as a offline deal altogether. You don't have the hassle of going to multiple vendors. You're just dealing with one simple ad exchange, launching a scalable campaign. We recently did a campaign of launching 15,000 screens go live in one single day. That's the scalability we're talking about. Not only this, there is a real-time reporting. You're not anymore dependent on proof of play. With real-time reporting, you're also paying for the impressions only. You're not paying for the entire day. So there's a lot that is happening in programmatic world. When it comes to measurement, we have third-party partners. We do BLS and Kanta study along with the brands, which kind of tell us about the uplift. Not only this, it has gone to such an advanced level wherein we have partners which help brand build their first-party data by collecting MAIDs, which they can further retarget and actually look at a full funnel approach. So like Vignesh very well said that performance भी है, branding भी है, सबको वो magic wand चाहिए. You cannot fit into everything. But as and when we are also proceeding in programmatic DOH, we have CTV, OTT, another audio is a format that will be launching very soon as well. Connecting the user at multiple touch points and not missing the essence of the medium, that's always there, but how to make it more transparent. That is one thing that we have been working upon. There are a lot of brands which actually come to us and say, airport पे हम लोग 3 साल से खर्चा कर रहे हैं, हमें नहीं पता कि whether the audience is there or not. So we also help brands get those footfall report, audience analysis, demographics, etc. This might not be exact programmatic, but it's somewhere near. And I'm sure 5 years down the lane, like she talked about having a camera or a eye sensor, I'm sure the technology will be so AI driven. We might sitting in the room, the screen can actually count the people, number of people. That's where we will also be able to count maybe audience CPMs as well. So we are getting there. And programmatic DOH is one solution wherein all the monies that is there, you can actually make it ROI driven, more counted, more measured.
I think important point that you touched upon and Suchi also spoke about getting the first party information from all of these engagements that you do with the consumers. So question to you, Sahil, how have you leveraged programmatic mediums or campaigns?
How are we able to get efficiencies out of that particular audience set? I think that's the intent, and programmatic has really helped us achieve some of those targets. Yeah.
Juicing without creating a fatigue, as you said. So this brings to me my another question, which is how are you allocating budgets? So maybe we can speak to you, start with you, maybe, and come to the center, because then I don't want to get into a debate of last kaun bol raha hai, first kaun bol raha hai. So
Yeah, fair
how are you allocating the budgets?
No, fair enough. I think I'll address that question in two parts. One is what do we use as an input metric in terms of assessing before we in terms of media planning before we execute the campaign, and what are the progressive metric which we observe over a period of time to make course corrections. So I think one of the most critical thing to understand or know in the first place is the campaign objective. You need to be very clear with respect to what you're going after, whether it's awareness or whether it's quality of awareness, which is familiarity, you're driving consideration or preference or anything bottom funnel, right? Apart from the campaign objective, I think understanding the user, your target audience, is something which you need to invest into, not just in the context of demographics, but what are the media consumption habits. That's there. I think also to a certain extent, the channels which you're trying to operate on, are there any kind of an overlap so that you can bring in some kind of cost efficiency before you get into media execution. And once you've made things live is when you assess as to what is the cost efficiency each channel is bringing in. And if some channel is very expensive, is when you can distribute the budget there. Of course, we leave some kind of budget for new and emerging channels as well. So that is something which we always keep aside. And I think a lot of these questions help us answer to give us answer to the other side of question as to whether we want to go behind reach or frequency. What should be the weightage between these two? Should it be performance oriented or should it be brand oriented? Should it be online investment or should it be an offline investment? Should it be linear TV or connected TV is what we are going after. I think this is how we do budget allocation at Porter, basically.
Shuchi, do you want to add to that? Because I know your life must be quite complex allocating the budgets across.
No, in fact, adding on to that, I was just while he was talking, if we were to keep ourselves on that side of the table, for them it's difficult to understand, like we said, measurement. And if we were to put ourselves in the place where we are every day, for us, we would want to put out what is the best for the client, right? So in that particular case, like he said, I'll try to stick to the AI rule of what you input, actually you get it as the output, right? So ensuring that the channels that you decide for a cross-channel integration, first we decide upon that. Of course, like you said, experiments are needed, which is what we also propose to clients typically at an agency level, that, you should park 10-20% of your budgets in experiment. Those channels where we've seen successes in the past is also that, we continue building in. And at the same time, the newer channels also get the scope to come into play, because not that we continuously do that, because then that becomes an always on sort of a thing. So that being said, could be one of the ways in which we are trying to tackle this situation. Uh, Along with that, consistently, I would still say that because this is still fragmented, like we just spoke in the last half an hour, the messaging has to be consistent across, so that we are not showcasing a particular piece on one channel and the same communication that for all advertisers, it's very important in terms of the measurement as to how do we prove the success of that particular piece, right? So given with whatever, wherever the industry stands today, if you are able to make sense and show an impact in whatever forms it is for us as an advertiser, is where we should be heading into typically.
Sahil, any example from your brand that you want to just talk about using programmatic cross-channel integration?
What I mentioned about the large, the top of the funnel, starting from a television and then eventually leading up to a typical bottom funnel, wherein our large, integrations with the platforms are deep enough to actually give us a good efficiency on the overall funnel. I think that those are the examples that have really worked well for us. Having said that, the ideal world that we have not tried to paint right now, I think जहाँ पर सब कुछ measurable होगा and everything, will be easily we'll be able to track. I think that world is yet to come, and we are really hoping that that comes soon.
What has been your experience?
Or multiple, I think. So we work with more than 200 plus brands. At a vertical level, I think we have seen success.
Anything exciting that you want to talk to the or
I think,
tell the audience?
Definitely the fintech space, I think, has been super important, right? I think we are trying to boost payments as well. So we were able to leverage on a campaign. Typically, we go in digital first campaigns and then we are able to execute, etc. But we were actually able to do this across multiple ecosystems with digital and to our connected set-top boxes and as well as the retail outlets, right? So where you say go to a retail outlet. So typically the idea was to basically capture them at say 9 in the morning, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then back in the evening, right? So how do we connect all these touch points, right? And then the way we measure them is on a combination of two things, because all these channels are separate, right? They are not connected. So in some, it was definitely a brand lift study basically gives you, because a lot of times purchase is not immediate, but you are able to see the input metrics rise. So I think multiple examples on that side as well. But happy to share with the larger team. Anybody wants to understand, happy to share multiple more offline.
No, so there are many interesting examples. Like we were talking about Lenskart, and I was with that team in the morning. They are trying this experience of using or experiencing the product online, and then go and test out the product in the shop. So that's the kind of omni-channel experience that they are trying to offer to their audiences. Any learnings for the audience from your experience that they should be careful about, or they should be worried about?
I can go there. I think the expectation is that if you have an omni-channel ecosystem, everything is at the same level in terms of targeting, in terms of measurement, in terms of addressability. Is it the same? No. I think multiple channels are at multiple stages of evolution, which are moving fast. Some are not moving so fast. And I think there is a trial and error that is associated with all. So I think one learning is that I think while we are fast evolving, I think we just need a little bit more patience. I think that is something that's
Anyone wants to, we will keep maybe 30 seconds for the audience if there are any questions. But yeah, anyone who wants to add, what are the learnings and the people should be cautious? Yes, please.
So I think in Lemma, every day is a learning. We learn a lot from our brand marketers, from partners. One thing that we have actually observed is there are certain brands which are actually globally evolved in programmatic. They're already doing traditional DOH, but for them moving, they're the early movers in this category. So I think the learning that has been tremendously for us is there are certain brands which are very stubborn. They don't want to move into programmatic world altogether. This is something which is completely no right now. So I think it's very important for a brand or a marketer to understand whether they can be a future or they can wait for the future. So this is the time when there are emerging formats. It's the time when they can be actually part of that brand wagon and contribute to the learnings which all the platforms can evolve together.
Well said. I think one needs to be a part of the growing or evolving curve rather than jumping in it later. So time is up, but maybe 30 seconds for any questions from the audience, unless they're sleeping.
If you're kind, we can ask maybe a one, if that's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Just on special request, of course, we're going to be taking one question. If somebody has a question, please feel free to raise your hand. We'll get the mic passed to you.
I hope we didn't put you off on sleep.
No, I'm not going to do tick, tick, 1, 2. I think what I'm going to do is, of course, firstly, thank all our speakers for joining us. And of course, Ms. Ray, thank you for curating this conversation for all our eminent panelists, and to all our leaders on stage. Thank you for taking our time from your schedules and, of course, giving us the power of wisdom on the platform. With that being said, we just request you to please step forward. And to help us with the token of appreciation, may I call upon the Chief Strategy Officer of Mob Avenue Media, Mr. Sumit Pansali. Let's give him a warm round of applause. With that, thank you so much, Sumit. We just request you to give the token of appreciation to all our eminent panelists, of course, starting with Omkar. Thank you so much for joining us. This token of appreciation is presented to you by Mob Avenue. Thank you, Sahil. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Shivalika. Thank you for giving us your valuable time and joining us today. Thank you, Suchi. Thank you for joining us today at the platform. Thank you, Vignesh. Thank you for joining us and being a part of our edition today and sharing your anecdotes of wisdom. And of course, thank you to Ms. Ray for curating this conversation for us. Thank you so much. May I urge all of you to please come together a little bit forward. Sumit, please join them in the frame as we request all our leaders together on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a big round of applause for such a fantastic discussion. Truly, I'm sure with all their sharings, you would have learned quite a lot. And with that, thank you so much once again for joining us. Well, moving on, we're going to be moving ahead to the last session for the day, as we're talking about mastering the art of integrating commerce with marketing. And which brand are we putting it in focus? We're talking about Kotak Mahindra brand. So, ladies and gentlemen, for the topic on mastering the art of integration commerce with marketing, we have the head of marketing who's going to be joining us. But for all the ones in the room, we just urge you that if you've had any sharings so far, remember to hashtag e4m real time as one word. And trust me, for the last session, we are excited, and it is truly an honor to now call upon stage, ladies and gentlemen, the head of marketing, Kotak Mahindra Bank, Mr. Kedar Swami Ravangare. Let's give him a warmer round of applause. And of course, curating this conversation for us is Neeta Nair, editor of Impact. Let's warmly welcome her with a big round of applause. Thank you so much, Mr. Kedar Swami, for agreeing to us on the fireside chat, and we couldn't have had anyone better than Neeta taking on with this chat. Let's continue and get you guys seated, and I'd like to leave it in the able hands of Ms. Nair.
Mic check? Yeah. check, check.
It's working. It's working.
Now, from human negotiations to manual insertion orders for websites, advertising has come a long way with programmatic. If I were to talk about something on a lighter note, I would say back in the day, programmatic advertising was the closest that advertising could get to rocket science. Because back then, while everyone knew that it was the next big thing, nobody quite understood the domain. Cut to now, we're having full-fledged conferences on programmatic advertising, and it speaks volumes about the kind of impact that technology has had in the advertising business in India. And to speak more on that, in the context of commerce, we have with us a very knowledgeable marketer, Kedar, who's currently with Kotak Mahindra Bank. And in his past life, he was with Amazon for 10 long years. So thank you for joining us, Kedar.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure being here and love the way you guys have been conducting this. I think it's been sort of the fourth year now and good to see this particular topic getting so much of support and interest.
Now, Kotak Mahindra has an exponential growth in the past few years, and I think the credit goes to its digital marketing strategy as well. But we want to dive a little deeper. We want you to tell us how important has programmatic advertising been in this journey for you?
I think overall in India, we are at a very interesting time when banks are trying to be fintech and fintechs are trying to be banks. And I say this very often in every conversation. And what that means really is you start treating banks more like, backwards of what consumer need. That's a big shift. As you see, when you have to scale your businesses, there's no better way than taking your journeys digitally. What has happened in the past few years is also the way Kotak has really taken up programmatic buying or the way they've reorganized themselves around driving overall acquisitions as well as overall cross-selling, upselling digitally. And at the heart of it has been the apps. And from there, I think they've gone really deeper. There have been 4 or 5 big things, if you reflect and see. I think the first thing that has really helped is defining the customer journeys. I think that's first big thing where the more frictionless these journeys are, the higher output that you get in any kind of investment that you make. I think that was first big shift. The second has been segmenting and going really deep in your consumers. And the more you know your consumers, the better your solves are, the better your whatever you recommend to consumers. I think that's kind of been great. And the last part is once you know your consumers, I think the higher the match rates that you drive, which is your first party data and the lookalikes that you have, the more you're able to match them, the higher the returns have been. If you look at a meta analysis of data across not just this sector anywhere, anyone who operates with a match rate higher than 60 to 70% tends to have a higher conversion rates and hence sees more investments going towards programmatic. So I think kudos to all the marketeers, to all the teams and everyone in the organization to have picked this up much ahead of time.
I remember going through one of your campaigns, the 811 campaign, which was about a digital bank account. That kind of increased your loan applications by 99%. Now, of course, a lot is dependent on reaching the right consumer at the right time on the right medium. But I want to understand from you, how important is creativity in this process? Like, how important is it to bring that in to actually convert that customer interest into actual sale, especially for a serious brand like yours?
I'm glad you asked this. Many times a misconception is that programmatic buys is basically, or programmatic marketing is essentially devoid of creativity. And you tend to kind of do an A/B testing to say, hey, X creative works better than Y, and then you really can automate all of it and drive it. I think the creativity is very much at the center of it, I would say. And if you were to think of it, the if you look at the traditional marketing, the toughest creative has always been an out of home because you have to literally write one line on it. And programmatic in many ways resembles that, because what you have to do there is you really have to prune and pick and be sharp in what you want to communicate to your consumer, and in a very in a way that really has a stop value, at the same time can engage and get a action done. So what you're essentially asking of the consumer is probably much more than what you end up doing in a normal traditional medium. So creativity is important. Creativity stemming from data and stemming from understanding consumer. I think that's the new part, as opposed to earlier where it was largely about how well you understood a consumer. Now there is enough trends and back data that you can go and from crunching those data to be able to get to certain insights. I think that aids creativity. If you use that to your advantage, I think you tend to have a much better output going in for you. So your investments would definitely see a much better returns as you kind of match it. If you keep it cut and dry, then you tend to see a short-term results where there'll be a lot of transactional outputs that you'll get, and often you kind of confuse short-term results to brand being good, which may not necessarily be the case.
That brings me to this very interesting case study, which has impressed me in the past. A couple of years ago, I think in Jaipur, there were these weekly power cuts, which this brand called Luminous Inverters kind of identified. And what they did was they would advertise to the consumer on the mobile just when the power cuts were happening. So it kind of amplified their message in a very smart way when people are actually suffering. So, and this was courtesy their programmatic partner. I'm not sure, I think it was MIQ. Now, I want to know, from the conversations I have had with marketers in the past, it's a very linear process. You first have a pitch for creative, digital, for media, and then at the end, you bring in your programmatic partners. Do you think there is merit in kind of getting the programmatic partner also in the process much ahead, so that you can actually benefit from that digital data crunching and all of that?
Yeah, I think the switch has already happened a lot. If you look at a lot of agencies that come to you now, they will start with a full stack solutions that they have. Very interesting. As at Kotak, we are kind of looking at partners, and here's a call to all of them who are also interested in kind of working and developing new things. But I met a few people, and they literally questioned everything we did, and with data, with creatives, and they literally brought not just programmatic, but that led to a bunch of things that the brand should be doing. So the way, especially when you have a complete digital journeys, I think a lot changes in the way you start conceiving your investments, or you start conceiving your campaigns and your journey. So I do feel that the ones who pick this up and make it at the center are the ones who are going to be the big game changers in the next 4 5 years. And I feel that there is a lot of merit in kind of seeing it as integrated, as opposed to something being first or something being at the end. And there's a thing called through the journey or through the funnel. The more you start seeing it as through the funnel, and start looking at all your investments as through the funnel investments, a lot changes. You'll start building your campaigns and your measurements in a very different way.
Okay, that a big part of what a marketer does, I think, is directed by how much money you're saving. And programmatic does that beautifully. I think, you can do advanced targeting with, maybe half the costs. I want to know from you an example, where Kotak perhaps used it to its advantage and maybe redirected the monies when you felt it was not working in the right way. I mean, now that you can do that real time with programmatic.
Yeah, I think there are lots of advantages of being sharper in your investments, because the spill is less. As the spill is less, the same money could give you a higher return. And that just there are two ways as you see it. One is a good marketer might take the monies that are saved and double down on the campaigns, as opposed to taking that money and flying it back. So as we see it, I've I've seen a few campaigns where, especially targeted to existing. So take an example of a account that you have, and you want your consumers to upgrade to a certain account, a live case that we are working on. And when we looked at how do you really upgrade an existing account holder to a new account, which may perhaps be a better account for the consumer, there were ways in which we really thought about it. Programmatic was one way where we said that, okay, hey, let's just take and make this campaign all about internal data, and then basis your internal data, go and target it. As we started doing that, we realized that we're going to be operating at a much higher frequency, at a much better reach in a certain set of audience, which otherwise would have been underserved, and we would have been in some ways going a little broader. And by that, I don't mean broadcast. By this, I mean a difference of about a good 1,000 basis points, which is a huge thing when it comes to a very small set of audience that you're going after. So I think there is 811 is a great example, not just from a campaign point of view, but in many ways, in the way we have really gone ahead and been super sharp and been able to acquire a very huge set of consumers in a very short time. The other brand that comes to my mind, and I've seen this journey firsthand do this really well, was Google. I think Google Pay. I don't know how many of you all would have ever seen an ad of Google Pay anywhere. Hardly any investment when it comes to mass or the traditional way, but all of their entire UPI journey has been completely in the way they've managed, and kudos to the team to have done that. So that's another great example to see.
Another thing is, I think marketers for decades have had this have had a difficulty connecting their ad spends to actual customer purchases. Now, by linking content with commerce today, I think a big part of that battle is won. So, tell me what percentage of your overall budget do you dedicate to like shoppable ads, or maybe even influencers are live streaming? There are these icons where you can click and directly purchase, or any such mediums. What percentage do you really devote from your marketing budget?
Yeah, I think this is a classic. I always remind again to everyone I interact with is there was this article, HBR article number 1, which was classic sales versus marketing. And sales versus marketing really made sure that marketeers were working hard, and at the same time, the sales teams were working hard. Over a period of time, what has really happened is, you've started making all your marketing very, very rational. So that's a good and the bad part. The moment you make everything rational and you make all your investments literally tied to just here and now outputs, you are losing out on something which is very, very core, which is equity of a brand and how do you do it. So at one end, there is a good part where whatever you've invested, you know the output, and hence you decide whether or not you should double down. But most often, the tenures of the roles that people handle have shrunk, and unfortunate that the brand takes a suffering. So while and that's a piece that we need to caution, to be very cautious about. While programmatic is great, but at the same time there's a need for the investments to be balanced. In terms of what happens, I think a lot many times when you're in a situation where you're answerable to your spends, your go-to becomes a medium which is measurable. And that's what the challenge was for digital a long time ago. Like, I go back to my CPG days, and in the CPG days, we all knew what a TV would do. We would rather put money behind a wall painting versus putting our money on YouTube, because nothing was measurable then, and it was a notional spend. We didn't. But now I think it's very, very different. It's very easy to say, hey, what is the impression, and hence how many clicks, and finally how many of them could convert. Shoppable ads have come to your rescue. A CPG guy sitting in can now tell how many chips were sold by an ad being put up on an Insta. So you're taking the convenient route of explaining internally on what your marketing monies are doing. So it's convenience, but at the same time, if you get it right, there's lots that you finally end up measuring and putting. A good mix, if you were to look at it, and this is CPG, commerce, and in some sense BFSI. I think it depends on the journey of the brand. It depends on the life stage of a organization, a product. When you are at probably a growth stage, and if you are already at an MVP or an MLP, it's a great idea to kind of go double down on programmatic, or let's say performance, where and during that stage you may probably end up having a much higher skew towards your investment. But then as your numbers start settling in, as your MAU DAO kind of starts settling in, is when you need another hockey stick, and that's when going mass, much broader, might give you a much higher returns, or probably can help you scale. And that's been the journey. If you look at most startups, they are now kind of coming to a point saying that, okay, hey, we are now hitting almost a dead road, saying that, okay, our numbers are kind of stagnant, all the unicorns, and you see that happening much more in India because they've all kind of relied a lot on investments. But once you settle, I think a ratio of about a 70-30 or 60-40 kind of gets you well. Again, this is through the funnel, depending on the task and what you have. But if you're already at a mature stage, yes, that kind of a ratio works.
You spoke about measurement. Now, digital actually has that problem wherein you have multiple mediums, multiple platforms, but no common measurement. So for you, when you put in that kind of investment, what is that? How do you gauge that impact of that particular investment on programmatic now?
See, I think at least in there is there's a common currency that we all understand, right? When it comes to the brand, equity, TAMA, spawn, consideration, past 3 months, attributes, triggers, barriers. Like there are a whole host of these common matrices that we are all used to, and hence we can gauge and know, map our investments. The beauty on digital is that these could be customized to the task that you have, and which is what is the exigence or the role of programmatic or digital in many ways. So while you may not have a common metric known, but certain health of your brand or a certain health of the business are still they're still common. For example, cost of acquisition or ROIs, the fact that have you been able to get new to XYZ business or repeat to your business. So these are all very common. They're just referred very, very differently. There's a lifetime value that you calculate. So a banking sector might call it as a RV, for e-commerce might refer it to as lifetime value, DSOPS, GMS. So there are different terms, but there are already known terminology that is there, and I think they fall under certain brackets. But the flexibility of having customizing your campaigns to that task is what makes this medium beautiful.
And another thing is artificial intelligence is considered to be this transformative force in all things digital and across advertising. How important is it for programmatic advertising, and have you used it in the past and, to your advantage?
I think we all had AI as part of what we used to do, right? Like to me, AI was that macro that you built on your Excel when you're trying to manage your stocks, or when you're trying to manage and solve a complex problem in your assignments, to now where it's all hidden in a black box, and AI is what we see it. It's just that the scope and the width with which some of these models can do, and the pace at which you can do are really worth taking notice of. If you ask me a few things where I have seen AI change the way we have looked at it, I think content, as well as, and within content, if you see the way voice cloning, the way influencers slash leveraging clones, or let's say certain mascots to be replaced completely without anyone being there, is a big shift, is a huge shift. So there were times when you would dread having a celebrity on your brand, but just because there was little flexibility of being able to make content with them given the time, so on and so forth. Now you could literally have clones. Now you could literally have everything done easily without any logistical challenges that you have. So I think when you look at even programmatic, there's a bunch of things that are there in terms of content, in the way an email could be written, in a way a SMS could go, in a way a notification could go. Any form of content, I think, is very easy to change. You could get just write and type the mood in which you want it, and you'll have 10 versions. So I think content is one place where AI in programmatic is probably doing. You'll speak a lot about segmentation, you speak a lot about meta analysis, you speak a lot about custom creation. But I think what really makes a difference is again in the way the content will start being made and built. I think that would be a big that's a space to watch out for.
Kedar, we have just about enough time for one question from the audience. Do we have anybody who wants to raise a question? All right. Okay, so I have one last one for you. We've done so much in programmatic advertising. I just want to understand from you that one game changer in the field, which was unthinkable perhaps years ago, and that has happened and that surprises you when it comes to programmatic advertising today.
I think I recently met someone who's been working on this for some time, and this is yet to be launched. But what they've managed to do is they've managed to crunch the entire cycle of inciting to finally segmenting to messaging and creating content and finally getting a measurement done. So think of this as an end-to-end stack that you could just plug and play, and it'll basically tell you for each segment what problem it has and hence design a creative, and all of this being done in less than an hour's time. So you could essentially have a full through the funnel campaign that can be developed all at all by just telling what problems you're facing, and that's about it. So a full stack of measurement, content, mounting, having the media buy done for you, all of it. And that's such a game changer for all the SMEs. That's such a game changer for people who do not want to have like huge marketing teams. It's like end to end being collapsed into literally a small solution that you can apply. I think that's where it is headed, and that's where we are.
Super. So I think we've covered miles and miles still to go. Thank you so much, Kedar, for that very insightful conversation. I learned so much. And yeah.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for this.
Thank you so much, Kedar Swami, for joining us, and of course, Neeta, for conducting the fireside chat. We really enjoyed the conversation, but one last bit, Neeta, if you can help us with a token of appreciation to our leader on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed the conversation, let's give them an iconic round of applause to encourage his presence. And of course, thank you so much once again to our speaker, Mr. Kedar Swami, talking about mastering the art of integrating commerce with marketing. Of course, Kotak Mahindra Bank being the brand in focus. Thank you once again to the both of you for joining us. And of course, we hope, ladies and gentlemen, that you had a great day today at the third edition of the Real-Time Programmatic Advertising Conference 2024. Once again, let's give them both a bigger round of applause, and thank you so much for joining us. And with that being said, you've been a great audience, and thank you so much for joining us on the third edition. We look forward to welcoming everyone for the awards ceremony, but we'd request you to now vacate the hall. Of course, if you've registered for the awards, we'd request you to re-register yourself and join us back for the awards. Ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Bhavna Bhatia, signing off for today, and we just urge each and every one of you to help us in vacating this hall with all your belongings, as we're now going to be closing the doors as we're getting ready for the awards on the other side. For all the ones who are in the awards joining us, we request you to please re-register and then join us back. Thank you all for being such a